Okay, hello good viewers. Today we are going to do another one of these little battles, made up again, not following in this case a scenario, but it's kind of fun just to do your own thing, especially when you're a loser like me and you have to play by yourself. What I want to do today is hopefully force a situation that allows us to look at assault in particular, how assault works and what how it begins and sort of how it goes together and how it does things. It's actually important because a lot of this game will end up being assault because these hexes are supposedly about 100 yards. It's the name of the game. So when you actually close on somebody, that's sort of the whole point. We'll get to that, but it's kind of an interesting way to do things, and it's kind of fun. Importantly, we're also going to use we're going to use 2 platoons on each side, which means we have to throw in the additional coordination table to see if you get to activate, for the guys we're activating, both at the same time, or you can do one at a time, which makes a difference in sort of your strategy. Other than that, we're going to do everything just normally, and we're going to see how it goes. So in my game, as I have this set up, I have may as well, let's see. Let's put this so that I can reset my camera kind of close to where it's supposed to be. This is all very low tech, people. Believe me. You probably already figured that out. Over here is my little table. So I got my time set up. I got my differential here. Got my differential. Generally speaking, it's usually the attackers, which are going to be the Germans. There's 2 more sort of differential points, or 2 less on the attack or on the defender. So the Americans are the offender, so that's where they have to, they'll lose if we go past that. The Germans will lose if we go past 4 on the casualty marker. I like mortars because they're fun, so I always start off with a mortar in each side ready to go. So in this case, I'm starting out originally, all the communications are there, all the ammunition is there. Both of these guys have mortar support if they so desire. Germans have the initiative. We're not going to roll for initiative right now, but we're going to just go from there, and we're going to see what happens. So bear with me here, and I'm just hoping that everything's kind of getting in place. So Germans go first. So the first thing you do, which we haven't done before, is you roll for can they coordinate their platoons. So there's a little table that says coordination table. You roll your dice. I got a 2. And a 2, between 1 to 7, it says each platoon is activated individually. So the Germans are going to activate individually, which is okay. So they're activating, so they're the attackers in this case. So what am I going to do? The whole point of this is to take these buildings over here, so they're going to have to move. And they're going to have to make it good, do it pretty quickly. Are there people in sight initially? Well, very far away, yes, but very far away. This guy can't see anybody. He couldn't even see him. Can't see him because those trees can't see him for those trees. No here. He can see him if he wants, but he can't see him. So the only really issue would be I want this guy to fire at this guy. But it's so far away, it's not really worth it. I'd rather have these guys move up because they want to actually beat the clock. They want to get in here and start closing on the Americans. They are activated, so they get 3 movement points, or at minimum 2 hex moves into any terrain you want. So 3 movement points. They're going to go, this guy's, this is platoon 2. Platoon 2 going to activate first. They're going to go 1, 2, 3. Get them a little bit of cover. So I'll put a little movement action on him. Then Lang and his crew are going to do the same thing. 1, 2, get closer. Because initially, the Germans just got to get up there. So we're not really going to be worried too much about thinking. They just have to get up there because they want to get close enough to start doing some damage. Rolf and his crew are going to go 1, 2, 3. They're going to go all the way up there. Oh wait, they're platoon 3, so they're done. They can't go yet. So that was activating platoon 2, which there should be another guy for platoon 2. What did I do? Where's a platoon 2 guy? There's got to be a platoon 2 guy. I don't see a platoon 2 guy. So we're going to cheat and use a red 2 over here and say that he's here. So this one is still going to go with 2 and 2. And he's going to go 1, 2, 3 into that building right there. So, gotta give me wide berth, people. Okay, so that's the second platoon who's been activated. Now my guys get to they say, okay, Americans, what's your reaction? Well, they can't see these guys at all. No one can see them. Even these guys can't see them. The only thing that can be done is this guy can shoot at this guy. He is in a building, he is in a building. You know, why not? So it's good practice again. So how do we do this again? We put a fire action little marker on him. We start to figure out how far we're going to go. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4. His little firepower is 8, or his firepower is 1, but his the column we look at is 8 on here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8, 4 minus 1. Remember, and then these guys have a firepower of 1, the little green thing there. So that's 0. They're shooting into a building, so that's minus 2. So 0 minus 2 is minus 2. So we go find ours a minus 2. And we stick it on there. So at least if this guy fires back as a reaction, he'll be harder for them to do anything. The other guys have nothing to do because there's really no, they can't see anybody, so they just hang tight. Okay, so that's that part. So the German second platoon has moved. Reaction was called. Reaction was made. They're done. Now the German third platoon takes off. So the third platoon goes 1, 2, 3. He wants to, again, get moving, even though it might get him into a position where he's not in the best of places. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So they have all done their movement. And again, whether it's a good idea or not, we'll see. Going to take a chance that they're pretty far away. The Germans are working against the clock, and we'll talk about that later if we get to a position where this kind of ends. Play it for a few turns. So Germans, now the third platoon has activated. So now we get to say, okay, Americans, you can now react to them. Well, nothing can be seen here. So even if they want to do mortar, for instance, they can't. These guys can, no, we can't see them because they cut through those trees right there. They can see those guys, okay? These guys can't see them, and I would really think they basically can't see them. It's right on the verge of this edge, but I'd say they probably can't. So the only thing I could do to react to platoon 3 for the American side is to shoot at these guys over here. I'll get it one of these times because they're wide open. They're over there. And because they're wide open, it's like, what the heck? Let's do it. Because there's no extra little modifier. They're far away, but they're in the open. So they're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hexes away. 8, 5 hexes is minus 3. They have an inherent firepower of 1, so it's minus 2. And there's nothing else. These guys are just in the wide open, so it's minus 2. And there's 2 guys going to be shooting. So 2 minus 2s go on this guy. Let's do that. 2 minus, oh, I'll put it over here. 2 minus 2s go on him. Okay. Now, you then say, Germans. Again, I've reacted. Now, Germans, what do you want to do? What's your reaction? And their reaction is to, what can they do? No one can see, these guys can see these guys. So I suppose they could lay down some mortar fire. I'm a little questionable on who can do mortar fire, but it seems to me like it can happen during reaction. I don't necessarily think it needs to be a platoon, a commander that does it. I figure these guys all got radio communication. So that's the only one that's sort of in sight in this case. So I'm going to, let's see. Yeah, he can't. I was gonna say he can, but he can't. He already fired. He can't fire back. Okay, he moved. But since mortar fire is not an action, I could put a mortar on this guy right now just for the fun of it, because why not? Why not use it? So I grab my initial guy and I stick him on here, and I grab my little sight and I put it over here on them. I read my table of mortar stuff and I see that in the Germans' case, in the Germans' case, 8 centimeter mortar, primary is 2. And it's in a building, so I'd say that's probably -2 because the building is there. So it's a 0. I think that's correct. You know, fix it if I'm wrong. This is a dumb thing to do. He should have done the mortar before, because it would have kept them even from firing. So that's really kind of a stupid thing. The mortar fire should have been first. But it is still part of a reaction, so that's okay. Even though it isn't a specific reaction, I think it's okay to do a mortar fire there. So let's roll and see where the secondary is. The secondary is on 4, which lands right here. I'm not going to, well, for completeness, I will. On those guys, it's a 0. I'll put it there just because, as I said, just to be complete. Hold on, my mortar round fell on the floor. Okay, I'll just do it right here. Those don't matter, I don't think, unless there happen to be a bunch of dudes in there. But anyway, so that's done. Again, there's nothing else. Everyone's been activated. No one else can move or see anybody to do anything. The Americans can't throw any mortar fire on the Germans because they didn't already. So I have a feeling that we're going to call it quits for that. All right. Now, it's important to follow all these little steps when you're first starting the sequence of play. We did the initiation. We did activation. We're going to do fire resolution. Fire attacks are resolved in any order, it says. And you go ahead and do that, and then we have assault resolution and mortar fire adjustment. So which fire is part of mortars or part of fire. So we're going to go ahead and do those. So let's fire on these Germans up here. They have a -2. 8 minus 2 is 6. They have a thingy of 6, so they're fine. So that fire did nothing to the Germans. Let's do this fire down here. So these guys down here. I'm going to use 2 dice just to make it easier. A 2 and an 8. So an 8 is a 6. There is nobody here that's below that, so nothing happens with these either. So that goes that away. And that was this fire here. The more I think about it, they probably shouldn't have been able to fire, or I shouldn't have put the mortar down. Anyway, it gets confusing. This is why you don't play solo, because you get really confused. All right, now it's time to do the mortar. So the mortar is just a 0. So we hit the, we roll the dice. We get a 5, which is a 5, which does nothing because these guys are, I think, are a 6 at minimum. So nothing happens, even if there's a 5. No, they're both 6s. So everything is fine. Mortar didn't do anything. Now it says once you're done firing and you've done all that resolution, it says mortar fire adjustment phase, remove the markers, determine mortar recovery, all those things. So we move these, that means. Now we could determine mortar recovery, meaning am I going to be able to use these guys again for the Germans on the next turn? What I'm going to do is extend. If you roll a 4, what to say, less than or equal to a 4, you can extend. You can fire right immediately. Got an 8, didn't extend. So now I'm going to remove these and I'm going to put them into the box that says support pending, meaning that they have to roll dice in order to have that mortar be useful again for them on the next turn. And in fact, again, if you follow the directions here exactly as it says, it says on cleanup phase, blah, 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 recombine, reset, check mission objective. Let's see, it says remove these, determine mortar recovery, which means check and see if they can use a mortar next time. So the Germans are going to check and see if they can use a mortar next time. They can, because they rolled a 3. Hot diggity dang. So I'm going to put these little guys down in the support available. So now both sides have mortar fire available again in the next turn. It's important to follow the actual steps on the, because you can think you got it figured out and you don't, and then it just confuses things. People much smarter than me have done all this play testing, and people have come into all kinds of situations, so follow the directions as best you can. Okay, that's that. That was turn 1. This thing you're supposed to do supposedly is now roll for how much time elapsed. So I'll roll 8. 8 for time elapsed is 4, so I'll move my little time thing down to 4 minutes, which again is going to be important later when we try to roll this thing together. So that's that. I'll remove all these, and everything is ready to go for the next turn. So no one was hurt. Lots of firing happened, but nobody was damaged. Okay. So next step, roll for initiative. So we're going to roll for initiative, and we're going to see if anything happens here. Who gets the highest one wins. The Americans got a 10. So it's an American initiative. However, when you roll a 10 on the initiative, you got to roll for on the fate table. So they're going to roll this dice. They get a 10. A 10 on the fate table says panic. As the sole activation for the current game turn, all units in a single hex selected by the opposing player and in the line of sight of an enemy combat unit must withdraw 4 hexes, and that's their movement, that's their activation for this thing, even though the Americans are activated. So the Germans look over who's in the line of sight. They are. I'm going to move these guys out because that's a nice building they're going to want to have, going to get. So it forces these guys to panic, and they move 1, 2, 3, 4. They move way the heck back here. I don't know if that's in the camera thing. And they get a little, they've done their maneuver, which bites because they're a good set of firepower. There's 2 little groups in there. So now the Americans are down considerably in their firepower for this turn, even though they get to go first. So not going well for the armies at this point. So next thing, roll to see if you get coordination between the 3rd and the 2nd platoon. You don't. I got a 3. It says each platoon activated individually. So I'll activate platoon 3, and I am going to, let's see, I am going to, I'm going to move, they're going to go into towards the woods. They're going to try to flush these Germans out and try to do something with them. So they're going to go, oh wait, first of all, any reason for you to put mortar fire on anybody, the American side? There's guys here, they could stop them from doing anything, because once you got mortar on you, you can't do anything. So that could be a good idea. I wish these guys were in the line of sight. I wish this guy was in the line of sight, because they're going to rush into these woods. However, this guy, it would still, if these guys are running by, if they stop here, it would be in their line of sight. But if they had a mortar on them, then they would be unable to do anything. So they're going to do that. They're going to put mortar fire on those guys in the building, even though they're just a tiny little dude. And when I look at the American mortars, the American mortar here is weenie. 0 is the primary, -1 is the secondary. So 0 is the primary, and it's in the building, so it's -2. If I'm doing mortars correctly, gotta find me a -2 here, somewhere in this mess. I really have to invest in some kind of, ooh, there's one. I got to invest in some kind of tray that's better, that I can get these things in separate. So -2 for them. Let's roll and see where the thing hits. The secondary hits, but it doesn't really matter unless it hits on top of them. It's a 10, and a 10 means it hits directly on them again. So it's actually a good thing, because now there's going to be, you know, 2 chances to hit them. So in that regard, it's actually good. So there was extremely accurate mortar fire. Okay, and now those guys are done. They can't do anything. They can't move. They can't shoot. They're done. So this is the correct way, I think, to use mortars. Use them first. Okay. We're still American initiative. We're still just starting this 3rd platoon. Now these guys, can still move because calling the mortar fire is not an activation apparently. They're still going to do their initial thing, which is they're going to crazily go 1, 2. These guys are crazily going to go 1, 2, 3. Now they might, you know, ruse a day, but I'm also trying to get this into a point where we have some interesting interactions here, so that I can demonstrate. Though that's the point of the dumb video in today's session. So they've done that. So 3rd platoon has done everything they can, because there's 2 little guys there and then these guys here. Okay, so 3rd platoon is done. They ask for response. They are completely in the clear. No one can see them. No one has any line of sight. That's the closest one, but I do believe that if we do this, it goes along this hex line here. So to me, they're in the woods. So these guys can't fire. So they can do. These guys can't fire. These guys can't fire. None of these guys are. That's it. So the Germans basically pass, and the 2nd platoon here, 2nd squad, gets to do their movements. Now, if you recall, these poor fools panicked, but that was their movement. So they can't suddenly now move up again. They're done. They've moved. So the only guys that can move is this guy, and he's gonna move up 3. He's gonna go 1, 2, 3. So he's kind of behind the bushes, and he's behind a wall. When I see a wall, to me, those guys would be hung up right up against the wall. I don't think that's the way the game plays it, but I think they would be, in my opinion. Why would they go into a walled place and go out in the middle and jump up and down and say, hey guys, shoot me? So I always think they're going to be over there. Anyway, they are protected. No one, the Germans can't, because now it's German reaction. Well, Germans can't react because there's nothing they can see. Now, the thing I don't understand is they can do limited reaction, but I thought that just meant going in reverse. They can't fire, they can't move up closer. I might be wrong, but right now there's really nothing they can do. So the Germans are not reacting because there's nobody in their line of sight. They could react, but they can't because they're under mortar suppression. This is so cool. Okay, what happens? There's nothing that can be done. The Americans have all moved, so now it's time to fire, or fire resolution phase. Fire resolution phase includes the mortar here. Got 2 -2s on him, so I will say, let's see what happens. They're both 4s, -2's 2, absolutely nothing happens. Let's see if they get to fire again. They don't, and so that's over. And I'm going to remove these because they're done, and I'm going to put these back in the support pending pile because the Americans don't have now mortar availability, but the Germans do. Okay, that's that, and that's sort of, that was the game, that was the turn, because these guys can't really do anything. They're kind of waiting to see what the Americans are up to. So I'll remove all these little movement markers on the Americans, and it's time to see how long that took. So how long did it take? That took a long time. 8, and the time lapse is 4 minutes. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We've gone 8 minutes already in playtime. In the time of the game playing. All right. Roll for initiative. Here we go. Americans get it again. They get a 9 versus an 8. So we keep the initiative marker on the Americans. They get to go. Can they do both squads at once? Yes, they can do both squads at once because they got a 10. So they can activate both the 3rd and the 2nd squad at the same time. Now, here's where I'm going to start doing something more interesting. These guys here are going to assault these Germans right here in this little hex. Now, as far as I can tell, there's two ways you can assault. You can be like right up next to a guy at the beginning of your turn and then go right in and start the assault. Or you can be in a place where you have to move to an adjacent hex, which is what my situation is here. So I'm going to move these Americans into this hex, into the woods, so they have a little protection from these guys that decide to fire on them. And they are going to assault these guys. Okay. In fact, I'm going to also move this group here in. So they are moving in there. That's their movement. They all did their movement. But they are now saying, I am going to assault you, you evil Germans. And so they use one of these markers, which is an assault marker. The other side has the unit or the nationality who's the attacker. But you start with this one when you're going to move your guys into an adjacent hex. So you're not starting right next to them. So I put an assault like that to say I'm going to assault into this hex when it's time. So right now nothing's happening. Shoot, that was the whole third platoon. Now it's time for the second platoon to do some work. These guys are way off in the toolies, so they're going to run up here. 1, 2, 3, right up the road like a bunch of morons. Right out in the open. But they've been radioed that, hey, we need help. We're doing this assault. We're going up against this group, so we need help. So help us, please. So they're going to run up like that. These guys under Cherry are going to go 1, 2, 1.5, 3, and they're going to stop in the woods because they're a little bit nervous. They're kind of wusses. They're only got a thing of 5, a morale of 5. So they're going to hang out there and be able to react if they need to. So that's all the Americans doing all their stuff they can do. Now it's time for the Germans to react. So the Germans get to react to all this, only to what they see. Now, there's will be a lot of activity this time. First, let's look at this one right here, because this is interesting. They see them coming, and the reason you put this assault thing on and you got to stop in the adjacent hex is that the defender has to have a chance to shoot at these guys as they're running through the woods trying to get them. So there has to be, a fire from these guys into the attacking Americans. So these guys are in an adjacent hex. They got their thing of 10. Their range is 10, so they're over here. 1 to 3 hexes. Well, no DRM. They are in an adjacent. Within 2 hexes, so they get a +1. So already they are at nothing. +1 for their firepower. +1 for being next to them. So there's a +2 already. But then it's a -1 for being in the woods. So instead of a +2, it's a +1. But there's 2 of them, right? So 2 +1s. These guys get to survive 2 +1s in order to be in a situation where they can actually do the assault. So that's what they're looking at so far. 2 +1s on Phillips and his crew. From those guys, let me put a little dealie on them so I know that they actually, okay, so they're firing that direction. All right, I'll put it over here. These guys also saw the Americans, and they're worried about their pals, so they're going to fire at them before they go into the hex. They're not going to fire into the assault hex, but they're going to fire at them here. They're 1, 2 away. Nothing +1, so it's a 1 already. 2 because they're 2 away, but then another 1 because they're in the forest, so we subtract 1. So there's another 1 on those Americans. So there's a lot of firepower going in on these guys as they're coming through there to try to do their assault. We'll just see what happens. I'm not sure. Lang can't do anything because he doesn't see what's going on. Rolf can't do anything. He doesn't see what's going on, at least this way. Now, Rolf can't see these guys, but he can see these guys. Those guys can see them. Those guys can see them. All 3 of these Germans are going to lay down fire on Cherry and his group because, why not? They're going to all lay down fire. So this could be the end of the scenario. Maybe. So let's figure out what this would going to be. 1, 2, 3, 4. They've all got their little fire thing of 10. So 4 is a -1 DRM. Into the woods, another minus, so it's a -2. So that's a -2 from Rolf and his guys attacking Cherry. These guys are 1, 2, 3, 4. Same thing, -2 from these guys. So that's a -2, another -2 on our pal Cherry. And 1, 2, 3 from these guys. 3 is nothing. So it's a +1, -1 in the woods, so it's a 0. So this is going to be potentially a bloodbath for the Americans because they're such idiots. And if it turns out that way, then we'll kind of manipulate it and get an assault. Then I'm going to show you how it works. That's the whole point. But we set this up. So now, oh, and I said this guy was shooting as well because he shot at them. So the Germans, except for Lang, have done everything. The Americans have done everything. It's now time to do the firing. Okay? So what do they do? And the Germans, the Americans have fire, have mortar available, but there's nothing they're going to do right now. So what does we do? Let's see what happens to Phillips and his crew. 3 die are going to be rolled. They're all +1s, and we're going to see what happens to those guys. You use the worst one, or the most difficult one. I got a 6, a 5, and a 1. So a 2, adding 1 means nothing, so one of these fires is gone. A 5 and 1 is a 6, but he's a 6, so that's fine. So another one of these is gone. A 6 and 1 is a 7. Is there anybody here who's 7? No. Everyone here is a 6. So the guy who is the best or the most important one in the group, I guess, which I guess would be this guy, is turned over. And now everybody else in his little crew has to go through a check. So these guys go through a check. They don't make it. They got a 7. So they are broken a little bit. These guys do their check. They got a 6. They're fine. So that's good news for them. Last guys roll. They get a 10. Now, oh boy. Now what that means is if you're rolling for this to get your morale checked and you roll a 10, this guy made it, right? It's these two guys that are no good. He made it. When you roll a 10, you become what's called a hero. Oops, let's put the American side. You're a hero. You automatically get a morale of 8. So that means these guys here get a morale of 8. And they are a hero, which means if they're within, I think, 5 hexes, they can move 3 movement points. If they're within 5 hexes of an enemy, they have to move towards them, even if they're out in the open, I believe. So they're kind of berserk. They're like, ah, and they decide to take off. They're going to assault these guys anyway, but what this does is help with the assault numbers. This is really cool how it just happened that way. I love it when a plan comes together accidentally, by sheer luck. So this is going to end up being a very interesting assault. I'll just say that. So what I'm going to do is they were assaulting the Germans in this hex right here. So they're going to all end up assaulting, oops, they're going to all end up in this hex. They're going to all assault. And now that they're in this assault hex thing, they now you turn this over, and now that says that an actual assault is going to occur in that hex, and the Americans are the attackers. So let's wait and see, because remember, if you read the directions, that was just figuring it out. But you don't do assault till after fire resolution. So you got to do fire resolution first. because that started out, remember, as fire resolution on the Americans coming in. So that's pretty cool. So it did damage to the Americans considerably to fire at them from 1 hex away. One of them became a hero, which is going to be interesting to see what happens. Okay, now, now let's get rid of these so we don't get confused. I'm already confused. I came confused. Now, let's work on this firing solution way down here. I hope you can see it. That's on Cherry and his group. Here's a 0 on them. The 0 is a 2, so that's not going to do anything. And let's do the other 2 are -2s. Here's a 6, which won't do anything to him. And here's an 8, which won't do anything to him. So all that firing, kind of realistically, he's in the trees, did not do any damage to him, because you -2, you're above or at the strength, the morale of the best unit in that group. So that firing from these guys did diddly over squattage, which is very lucky for the Americans in this case. Okay, and he couldn't fire back at them because he'd already maneuvered. So, you know, that would have been cool. Although he would have been very suppressed to fire back at them because he had so many attacks on him. All right, now, oh, this is so interesting. I hope this is coming through. Okay, now what do we do? We've done all of our firing. Everything's done. I'll even move these out of the way because I don't need them, because we're really sort of done with them. But now we get to do our assault. Remember, Lang couldn't do anything at the time. We're going to do our assault thing, which is the whole point of this video, as you recall. We were going to try to show you an assault. So here we're going to do that. So what I do, just to make things easier here, I take all these guys. Well, first I move everybody out of the way, and I put the assault on the hex that the assault's happening on. So that way I remember that's actually where the assault's occurring. Then I line the guys up. And I've got a bunch of Americans, but they're heroes. And that's going to help because that's their highest, that's their highest, little fella. That's their highest, what's it called? Morale, so that'll help. Now, what do you do when you're going to do an assault, okay? What you do is you have an assault modifier little table here, and it says cohesion differential. That means you take the best cohesion from each side and you see if there's a differential, meaning is there a difference, plus or minus. So the Germans are both 6s. These guys are all 6s, but they're actually 8 because they're hero. At least one of them was a hero, so that one counts. So the differential there is 2. So cohesion differential is 2. Okay. Then you look at this and you say, what's all of the other stuff involved? Basically, you are adding up these little blue numbers to everybody. So the Americans so far are 3 and 0, and 1 is 4, and 2 is 6. So they're 6. The Germans are 2 and 2, which is 4. So it's 6 to 4. But because the Americans, there's a differential here between 6 and 8 of 2, the Americans aren't just 3, 4, 5, 6. They're actually 8. So they're 8, and the Germans are 4. You then check this and make sure there's nothing like defenders in a rural building, no. Defenders concealed, no. Heroic versus fortified position, no. Envelopment, no. So there's nothing in here that helps the defender, sadly. Okay. So right now, these guys, 3 and 0 and 1 and 2 is 6, plus 2 because of the cohesion differential between this number and this number is 8. So their total number, just so we remember, their total number for the assault number is 8. The total number for the German assault number is sadly only what they add up to, which is 2 and 2, which is the blue number, which is 4. You then take the defender number and subtract it from the attacking number. So 8 minus 4 is 4. That number You then roll dice, a single dice. I got a 5, and you add that number to get this on this table. Okay, so the differential was what again? 6 versus 2 was 2, right? 4. It was 8. 4. Oh man, what did we say? See, this is so hard to not have friends. 3 and 1. Okay, that's 6. 7, 8. So it's 8 versus 4, so it's 4. The differential is 4. So, and I got a 5 on this table, but 5 plus 4 is 9, so I got here. And you read what happens. It says, urban assault, ignore that. Vehicle, we'll have vehicles. Defender must retreat. Each retreating non-vehicular unit conducts a cohesion check. So that's the first thing that's going to happen. So the defenders are the Germans. They got to retreat from this hex. So they both retreat. And you retreat like 3 or 4. So I think 4 is the maximum. So I'm going to go 1, 2, back here. So they're away from everything. They are going to roll, it says, for cohesion. One of them made it, one of them got a 10. So one of them made it, one of them got a 10. That means, guess what? The Germans are now heroes, so we're going to have to do something with them next. Okay, now, so that's that part is down to here. Check for leader loss. So it turns out later in the at 13.65 it says if you roll a 1 or a 10, your leader gets lost. The only leader involved was Phillips. So let's see if they get a 1 or a 10. We got a 7, so he's okay. Attacking and defending non-vehicular units not disrupted are marked with regrouping markers. Okay, so that means, let's see, the Americans are all in here. This guy is okay. He gets a regrouping number marker, which means when he fires, he uses a -1. This guy doesn't get a regrouping number because he's already kind of broken. This guy doesn't because he's already broken. This guy is not broken, but he gets a regrouping number as well. So there's 2 squads with regrouping numbers on them, and there's those other guys are already kind of hurt. Okay, so I remove this stuff, the assault and the hero marker, and so. There you go. That's exactly how an assault is supposed to work. However, this guy is a hero. This German is a hero now. He has to attack the closest hex within 5, and it's right there. So he moves 1, 2, and he has to stop because he's an adjacent hex, and so he has to put an assault on his little card, and he's going to assault them again. Now what I don't know is, should he assault them now, or do you go through the turn and wait and see what happens? I guess I'm gonna go into the next turn and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. So these guys are set up. There's no kind of firing between them, or there's going to be firing between them, but they can't do anything else. This is all set up for an assault for the next time. But that's because they got a dang hero marker again on them. Those things are wild. I love the hero markers. Now, I might be doing it wrong. Maybe he's supposed to attack him right now. I don't know. But I'm going to say no because it was at the end of a turn and we got to get to the next turn. So going through everything else, we check to see how long this whole rigmarole took. It took 2 minutes. So we are at now a 10-minute mark, which again is going to come in later if this all works out. All right. Let's see. Oh, mortar pending thing. The Americans have mortar. Let's see if the Germans get mortar. They don't, so they're still. Oh wait, the Germans have it. I'm sorry. The Germans have mortar support available. The Americans rolled and they don't have it. So the Americans don't have mortar, but the Germans do. So that's important to know. Now we go ahead and do for initiative. We roll. The Americans got 4, the Germans got 2, and so the Americans have the initiative. So the first things the Americans are going to do is these guys are going to fire on them because they're right there. They're 1, 2, 3 away in the open. 3, an 8, and a 3 is -1, +1 is 0. So they're on a 0, so that's good. That's smart. They're going to fire at them. These guys are going to, what are they going to do? They are going to go 1, 2 up into there, because the action's all in these woods apparently. And these Americans are going to fire into the oncoming guys. So what have they got? They've got fires of 8. So they're going to fire, and they're going to aim at these guys because they're the ones that are assaulting them. 8 right next door is nothing, so it's +1. Next door you get another one, so it's +2, but they have to get a -1 for their fire because they're regrouping. So they are they are, hang on, nothing +1 plus another one is 2 -1, so they're 1. So they are going to shoot at these guys with a 1, and I believe there's 2 of them shooting. There's 2 +1s. There's 2 groups that are shooting. This guy is shooting, and that guy down there is shooting. The other ones don't have the ability to shoot. Okay, so they're going to shoot at those guys coming in. Okay, so that's that figured out. So that's the Americans, whatever. The Germans now got to react. So the Germans, well, their reaction is that they're going to, storm these guys. And so that's going to become an assault in this assault hex. These guys are, well, let's do this first. Let's shoot at these guys first. So they're 1, 2, 3 away. That's nothing. +1 is 1. And that's it. So it's a +1 on them. So it's another +1. If I can find a +1. There's one. So it's a +1 on these guys from those Germans there, trying to help out the assaulting guys. All right. These guys, again, can't see them, but they can see these guys. They're all going to fire again on Cherry and the gang. And so they set up their markers, and we go 1, 2, 3, which would be nothing, but they're also suppressed, so it's -1 in there, or -1, +1 is 0, but then -1 because they're in a tree. So they're -1. From these guys, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 on a 10 is a -1, so it's -1. So from here to here, it's -1. +1 is 0. -1 is -1. And the last one is this guy. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So it's the same. It's going to be the same thing. -1. Cool. Everybody's done whatever they need to do. Now it's time to just do some of the fire resolution. So let's resolve fire on this guy. I'm going to roll 3 die because they're all -1. Pick the most detrimental. I got a 6, an 8, and a 7. 8 is the only one that's going to work because an 8 -1 is a 7, and that's greater than these. So he goes like so. And the other guys have to roll. They only got a morale of 5, and they don't pass. So both of these guys are in trouble. And that was these 3 firings. So that last time it did nothing. This time it did something. So that's kind of cool how the game, how it works. Chance is kind of fun. Now before they were messed up, they fired on him with a 0. So let's see if they can cause any damage to those guys. They're out in the open. Got a 9. So these guys absolutely are in trouble because they got a 9, and it's well past their little thing of their morale of 6. So that's this group. These Germans have 2 +1s against them. So we'll roll 2 dice. So the Americans fire at them. They get a 5 and a 3, which is a 4 and a 6. They're heroes, so they're 8, so nothing happens. Just wasted ammunition. The Americans get a +1 die roll on them, and it's a 7. What does that do here? That would take those guys, that guy, that guy. It would take them all. So I think what I have to do is take the most important unit, which I guess is this guy. So he is the squad leader. He is now a casualty. So when a squad leader is a casualty, you put him or something like him 7 minutes forward in the time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, to simulate when they'll get their guy back. And I got to move my casualty 1 towards the Americans because he's the first casualty of the game, pretty much. Okay. So that happened. And since that happened, all these guys in this American group have to take a check here. They all gotta take a morale check. This guy passes. That guy passes, thankfully. Because he hadn't passed, he'd be a casualty, I think. Or maybe he just stays that way. Last guy is a 6. Hopefully he passes. He passes, so they all passed. So that's lucky. I gotta look and see what happens when there's I gotta look and see what happens when there's actual if you're already this and then you don't pass again, does that kill you? Are you a casualty? I'm not sure about that. I gotta look that up. Okay, now the last thing to do is the assault. So I line them up like I said. That guy's in a regrouping, so that's just for firing. The Germans are here. They're heroes. And the Germans are doing the attacking. And they're heroes. Okay. Let's get rid of those. So, again, this is actually really good. First, you tally up, figure out what the specific numbers are. So the blues add up. 2 and 2 is 4. Americans are 3 and 2 is 5, and 1 is 6. So far the Americans have an advantage. However, is there a cohesion differential? There is, because these guys, their heroism puts them at 8. So the morale, I think that's how you would do it. The morale, you wouldn't just say the morale is 8, yeah. Maybe one of them is supposed to have a morale of 8. I bet you one of them was supposed to have a morale of 8, whoever was the one that rolled. He has a morale of 6, he has a morale of 8. So let's redo that. So I might have done the other one wrong too. All right, let's add these up. Oh, but that's morale, that's right, there isn't anything else. Yeah, no, I'm okay, I'm a moron. Try it again. 2 and 2 is 4, so they're 4 right now. These are 1, 4, 5, 6. So right now, there's a cohesion differential without doing anything else. The Americans are 6, and the Germans are 4. The Germans are doing the attacking. Now, you're going to add things to these numbers, or subtract. In this case, Is there a cohesion differential? Yes, because cohesion of 8 versus cohesion of 6, the best on these guys is a 2. So this becomes a 6. Now you subtract the defender from the attacker. 6 from 6 in this case is 0. So that means that what we roll is just going to be what we roll. That's going to be just the die roll. It's not going to be plus anything. It's plus 0. We got a 7. A 7 is this guy again. So a 7 again doesn't bother us until it says defender must retreat and take cohesion checks. That means these guys. So they retreat. They all get together and they retreat. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're going to go on the back end of the building back here. And they have to take cohesion checks. There's 2 6s, so we'll see how that works. Neither of these guys pass, so they're both broken. Now this guy, if he's already broken and he doesn't pass, maybe that kills him. I don't know. Because he had an 8. I have to figure that out. Or he didn't pass. I'm not sure. I have to look that up. So anyway, he didn't pass. So they're back there. They're in a hurting unit. Now, the other thing that this says is leader lost. There's no leaders involved. In fact, America's lost their leader already. And then it says attacking and defending non-vehicular, not disrupted, or marked with regrouping markers. So that means the Germans here, even though they won the assault because they were heroes, they won the assault, they both get a regrouping marker put on them. So the next time they'd fire, they'd have to deal with that. All right. So that was assault resolution. And I think everything's done with that turn. And so now you're at a point where you gotta see how long that took. That took a full 5 minutes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 15 minutes into this, all that action has occurred. Okay. In 2 more minutes, we can get back our guy Phillips. But we're not gonna worry about that right now. Okay, so what have we learned? Hopefully we've learned how to do an assault. We've learned about what heroes can do for you, if anything. And we learned what regrouping means. By the way, you can get rid of these regrouping guys if you want. You can. It's actually a little complicated. We should read the directions. Let's just for fun try to regroup this guy. Let's go to the next turn, but let's not actually do anything. Yeah, let's say we're done because we've tried to figure out, and we can actually add up these numbers and see what's going on. So right now, let's just call it quits. Let's go through what you do for regrouping though, because you can regroup, and that actually has some interesting things for under recovery actions. So it says to regroup, okay? Regrouping, what you do is you go to this disruption table, you apply die roll modifiers, and you compare it to the cohesion. If it's okay, they're fine, and they automatically, and that's good. If the modified die roll is less than or equal to the unit's cohesion, all regrouping groups automatically rally. Otherwise, units are activated and remain in grouping status. Now, what does that mean? Rallying is a little different. Rally means that when you rally, it means that, because if we tried to regroup our recovery, let's just do that. Let's just see what happens. Are we going to, here's our table for, regrouping recovery. So we roll our dice, we get an 8. Well, an 8 is, are there any kind of unit suppressed? No. Platoon leader? No. But an unmodified die roll, in this case, was an 8. It is greater than these, so they don't regroup. Okay. Had it been, and that's an action. That would be an action for these guys. They attempted to do that. Now they can't move. They can't fire. Boom. There's another guy that wants to regroup to see if he made it. Well, he got a 1, okay? So this guy didn't regroup, and then this was his action to try to regroup. This guy regrouped. He got a 1, which is well below his 6, okay? Now what that means is this guy did his regrouping, and this was his action. He can't do anymore. This guy rallies. So it means he can now go about a movement like normal. It's like you got 2 turns at one time. Because ordinarily when you do something like this, that counts as your action. But in this case, because he rallied, got out of this, he's in great shape. So it says that if you modified die roll is compared with, if the modified die roll is less than or equal to the unit's cohesion, all regrouping units automatically rally. And rally is when you are marked as activated, rally units recover but are not marked as activated. That's my point. So they can basically use this as not just their only action. Now they can go off and do whatever they want to do elsewhere. This guy would have to stay put. This guy would stay in that hex. He'd done his thing. But now in this turn, this guy could say, okay, see you later, Charlie. I'm going to go over into the woods. And that's going to be my action. Okay? Does that make sense? I hope so. So this was a lot to bite off. We bought off quite much more than we can chew. Now, but I hope that the assault made sense, and I hope it got regrouping. You got hero fire in there, hero status. That was pretty cool. And now we've got rally. When you're regrouping, you can get this. You can get a if you get a 1 when you die roll, or in this case, just below, you rally. So that's awesome. That's a new thing I didn't even think of talking about. So I'm pleased. Now, that's it. Okay, that's all we're gonna do. However, let's go back and look at this thing here and try to score what we were going to score. Turns out that if you're making up a scenario, well, this is how it all happened, right? Here was our time. Our time was 15 minutes, okay? And our differential here was 1 over to the Americans, so it's over here, okay? So now we're going to calculate what the number is for the attacker. That's how you calculate if you win the game or not. The attacker is the number, so you add minutes plus whatever the little number is down here. So minutes in this case was 15 minutes, minus 4 is 11. Okay? So the attackers got an 11. The attackers got 11. I know that's not really 11, but this is so I can remember what the attackers got. Okay. Now, when you read in the rules, when you're making your own scenario, you basically purchase things, like you purchase, in this case, mortars. And the mortars cost a certain amount. Okay. And in this case, mortars cost, this is going to be important when this happens. I look on this little table in the back of this other rule book here. Mortars cost 10 credits on a purchase. And it says that you keep track of those things when you're setting this up. And it says, for looking at who's going to win in the end, it says if you differential target number required to achieve complete attacker mission. Okay, the player with the lowest bid is the attacker. We didn't talk about that, but that's the Germans. The attacking player would then win the game if their final score is less than or equal to their bid, and loses the game if the final is greater than their bid plus 10. So their bid was 10 plus 10 is 20. So they got an 11. So their final score is considerably less than their bid. So, they got 11. Final score, the attacker player would win the game if their final score is less than or equal to their bid, and loses if their final score is greater than their bid plus 10. So their bid was 10 plus 10 is 20. They got an 11. So they're above their bid by 1. Dang it. They're above their bid by 1. So it is a draw. So all that action, in this case, it is a draw. If they'd have gotten 10 or below, they would have won. If they'd have gotten 20 or above, they'd have lost. But they got 11, so it's a draw. All that action, and it's actually a draw. Okay. So I know this was very complicated, and I know I probably made it more complicated by fiddling around. But I also hope that this might help some people just get into the game. It is so much fun. Definitely, if you get a chance to get a hold of this sucker, do so. It's a blast to play. And if you play it with somebody else, it's even better. But even so, it's very solitaire available. You just got to keep your numbers down, because if you're like me, you forget what the heck's going on. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope this wasn't too boring. And mistakes, please mention them. I know I made a bunch, but in general, I think we're getting the hang of this game. Last 100 yards, the ball.